Visit MikeThompson.com. Your adventure starts here at Mike Thompson RV.
Benvenuto, benvenuto, benvenuto. Glad to see you guys back. Hey, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Today, guys, I say this all the time, but we have an amazing show. We've got one of the best restaurateurs in America, period. This guy's family has been in the business how long, Troy?
Since 1923, I believe.
Almost 100 years cooking food. And we're talking amazing Mexican food. I think they were the very first, supposedly, probably, Mexican restaurant in LA in 1923. Brandy, can you introduce our guest for us?
This is Ron Salisbury. He is restaurant extraordinaire. He owns quite a few places, not just Mexican food.
Ron, welcome aboard. Glad that you came down today.
I'm happy to be here, I think.
You've got a fabulous story, and I kind of want you to just start with the beginning with your grandparents.
Well, my grandparents, it's that typical story. In about 1922, my grandfather pushed back from the kitchen table and said to my grandmother, "You're a great cook. We should open a restaurant." And I wonder how many people have said that and didn't work out. Luckily, it worked out because we've been here for almost 100 years. I've often thought, had she been a lousy cook and he's just trying to put her on, I wouldn't be here today. So,
well, you know what? It started in a little house, didn't it?
No, they started actually in those days it was Manita, which was Broadway today, and Santa Barbara, which is Martin Luther King now.
Okay.
So they were just east of the Coliseum, and they started there in 1923. In 1926 or so, my dad walked in there to have lunch, met my mom who was waiting tables, and they fell in love, decided to open their own El Cholo, which is the one on Western now. And they went over in 1927 to open that one. The one that my grandparents own is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
You see what a little compliment can do? Remember our show we did on relationships?
Right.
One little compliment, you never know what it can turn into. Honey, you're a good cook. Boom.
Yeah, and 100 years later, their grandson's running the company. How awesome is that? So, Ron, how long have you been in the industry?
Well, I was born in 1933, so we have these little first memories of life, little snippets, and mine truly are being in the restaurant, seeing things there. I think there's so much going on, so much lively things that those are first impressions I had. So, I'm 88 now, probably 87, maybe 87 years or more that I have memories of it.
So the restaurant was basically your babysitter.
Yeah, and there it lies in a good story too. It was my babysitter. And I don't know how many of you read the book Unbroken about Louis Zamperini.
Yes,
they made
absolutely.
The movie. When you mentioned babysitter, Louis Zamperini was a student at USC at the time and befriended my parents, and my parents wanted a night off. So he said, "I'll watch him." So he became my babysitter. In which another interesting thing, because, of course, Louis had an audience with Hitler. So if you say, 6 degrees of separation, I'm only 2 degrees of separation from Adolf Hitler.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But anyway, Louis became, I was very young when Louis was lost, and it was because he was a major sports celebrity in those days. When he was lost, it made headlines in the paper. And when he was found to be alive again, headlines in the paper. So when he came back, he wrote me a letter saying one of the main things that kept me alive in Japanese prison camp was I needed to come home at El Cholo and have a #1 combination, which I treasure the letter.
Oh my God. Do you have that framed?
That's
Of course I do.
incredible.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, then we became lifelong friends, and at the age of 90, one of my sons and I took Louis skiing, and he skied as well as anybody could ski.
At 90.
At 90, he was. I've been very fortunate. That restaurant has introduced me to a lot of very interesting, fascinating people, but Louis would always be heads and shoulders above all the others. He was such an amazing person.
Back then, for you guys that never been to El Cholo, you need to go, by the way. It was a staple. I mean, back, in the 23, 27, 19, right? 1923, 1927, there wasn't a lot of restaurants. It just didn't happen. Everybody ate at home. And then, you got the war coming and all that fun stuff. But it was a huge place. So all the celebrities would go to El Cholo, wouldn't they, Ron?
Oh, they did. And they were just like, in those days, celebrities were just someone who's in the movies. Someone does this. They came and they were unbothered. People didn't bother them, and
Yeah, it's not like today where people go
no,
goo-goo.
no.
Yeah.
Brandy's here.
So much fun. I love you guys. I mean it.
You know, Ron, you talk about the timing of this. You started in early 20s, and you obviously went through the 30s, which is a Great Depression, which is kind of when you came around, and then you had World War World War II in the 40s. So how did El Cholo survive through those two dramatic time frames?
Well, first of all, when you mentioned the Depression, and I to this day I feel very, very fortunate that I lived through that, because it gave me a grounding which has never left me, which just served me well. It just being careful that things can happen, being careful and taking care of things. It's been a wonderful experience. Very thankful, yeah.
It's probably the greatest gift.
But then when of course when the war came, we couldn't get the product because everything was rationed, and we used to use a lot of cheese. We didn't use a lot of meat, but you got rationing stamps. Everyone got the same amount. So my dad, two things: he couldn't get the product, and he also couldn't get the quality. And so when that happened, he just closed. He said, "I'm going to close the doors rather than serve an inferior product."
But didn't you guys, I mean, when you got that cheese around those, you got the big wheels of cheese, right?
In those days, there were 60-pound wheels,
and you would age those for a long time, right?
Well, you would age them. Our cheese is over a year old, but we would buy like 200 of these wheels, and we didn't have refrigeration, so we'd put them in this garage out in back, and then every 2 weeks, my uncle and I'd have to go out there and pick these 60-pound blocks up and turn them over, so the oil, which is now going down, would now start to go back the other way.
And what's the purpose of that?
Well, it's because the oil in the cheese would start to the heat would go down. So when you do it, now it start to seep back the other way, so keep it even. But anyway, so my dad, we closed until 1946. My dad was in service. Came back. My dad never really liked the restaurant business. My mother, because it was her parents, and my mother was obsessive about it. She said, "We're going to reopen." They didn't know if they're going to reopen, if anybody's going to come. They opened, and the day they opened, there was a line down the block.
Now, are a lot of the recipes
Same.
So they're your mom's recipes?
My grandmother's.
Your grandmother's.
Uh-huh.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just to have, anybody has a business for 100 years or almost 100 years. Nothing anymore lasts that long, does it, Brandy?
No, I think that's incredible that they've had the same recipes all this time, that they haven't changed. It's like when you're in America and then you go to Europe and you see that they have managed to keep the integrity of all the old buildings, and and you come here and none of that really matters. Like if it works, if it ain't broke, why fix it? It's kind of that scenario. I mean, if they have these recipes that everyone loves, why would you change them?
Yeah, Ron, I heard a story about some of your recipes. You had a chef that would always lie to you guys about what was in things so he could keep that recipe, right? But
That's
you
true.
you pieced it together.
I'd ask him 6 months later. He couldn't remember what he left out, so he'd give me a different recipe. Pretty soon I'd get exactly what. But no, actually the menu in those days was very, very simple. It was really based around enchilada, tamale, tacos, and relleno, beans and rice. And so the menu has evolved. We've added a lot of things over the years because we had to. I mean, at one time we didn't serve margaritas, if you can imagine.
I can't imagine that. I can't imagine a world without margaritas. It sounds terrible.
But here's the interesting thing. When did you guys bring the nacho in? And how did that come about at your restaurant?
Well, that again is another interesting story. Carmen Rocha was a server. She came from Texas, and she was one of our servers, and it was a Texas thing, nachos.
Tex-Mex.
And so it was prior when that crew was there. It was an awesome crew to work because they were so into it. But anyway, Carmen brought the nachos, and so guests would always want to sit with a certain waitress there all the time because they had their favorites. And Carmen would make nachos for the people in her station. On occasion, when those people would sit in someone else's station, they say, "Well, come on, I need the nachos that Carmen made for me." So pretty soon it became throughout the whole menu. We put it on the menu throughout the whole restaurant. When Carmen died, they had her obituary in the LA Times. It took about a third of a page.
Wow.
Yeah.
But think about it. A lot of people don't know this in the restaurant business. Just that one appetizer, you make enough of those appetizers, that can pay your rent, everything. I mean, just one dish, right?
Yeah, you're always looking for an extra dish that's going to light people up. You're constantly on that. And we have to be very careful. We don't add very many dishes, you look at the dishes on our menu, every 4 or 5 years, maybe another new dish showed its way there, and it earned its way on there.
So how many items are on the El Cholo menu?
Well, we probably have about 30 items total now.
30 items.
Yeah.
So some fall off and as others come.
Unfortunately, a couple of them that were from the beginning have fallen off because nobody ever ordered them anymore. We'll still make them for you, which is, I kind of like the thing leaving things off because someone comes in and says, well, you don't make it anymore. You know what? We'll make it for you. And it makes you feel special, and we still make it.
What would be an example of one of those that fell off?
The tostada, which was tostada salad, was one that, and that was one of my favorites because when I ran the restaurant every day, I'd eat a number 2 for 3 days in a row, have a tostada, then I go back to my number 2 again. So it became my staple.
So when did you guys, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, then I'm going to go backwards again, but when did you guys bring in the burrito? Which just sounds like a stupid question, but back then you guys didn't have it, did you?
No, well, again, that's one of those things that you start to hear about burritos. Burritos are showing up, So there was this restaurant over in East LA, El Tepeyac, which was very famous for their great big burrito, and the police station. I always heard about the police officers would go there and where they ate lunch. So I went over there and checked out the burrito, and we came back and created one.
Nice.
You always create something out of necessity or an idea.
Yeah. What is your absolute favorite dish at El Cholo?
Still in number 2.
Still the number 2. And what is the number 2?
Enchilada chile relleno, beans and rice.
Well, there you can't go wrong with that.
And what was you had a lot of celebrities coming through there. Jack Nicholson. What was his favorite? A couple tacos and some beans, I think it was, right?
Yeah, well, Jack Nicholson, he was part of a young group of actors, and they were trying to break into movies. And I remember when he finally got a little bit part, everybody came and celebrated. It was a big deal. But at one time, Jack Nicholson, interesting. He came in one night. In those days, we took money at the cash register. You paid at the cash register, and there's a booth right next to the register. And some of his buddies were in the booth right next to us. And he came in. He came on. He started doing just gibberish, nonsense. But it was so fascinating to hear this. He was acting out and showing without words what he could do. And I thought they're just fascinated. This was before he even really became big.
It's a success is having a place where it was pretty small, right? The original El Cholo, there's no place to sit down. So he had a line out the door every single night. What better advertising do you have than people standing in line waiting to get in?
We lost, that's a great point, because we lost a great advertising venue when we finally created a waiting room. Those people, we no longer had the
line outside.
The line. And interesting because, you learn stuff from COVID. Here's something we learned. Because of COVID, we had to go outside. We have a parking lot on the north side, so we put a lot of seating out there, and tons of people from the neighborhood started coming in who had never come before, because we no longer had that line. And for years and years, we never had that line out in front, which was our advertising. So you drive by the building, and the building was just this building. And so once they saw that, all kinds of people who never came in suddenly started coming in again.
Let's talk about that for a minute, Ron. You've got a lot of fabulous restaurants, and that outside seating for me, especially in Southern California. I hope they don't take that away. As a restaurateur, do you want to keep that, or do you?
You want to keep it because people have discovered it, and people, like the Cannery and Louis have great outside seating. I've always wanted to have a patio, a fireplace, and aquarium into all of our restaurants. Now, the only aquarium is on Western Avenue so far.
Oh man, those reef tanks are a pain in the ass.
That's cool. There's been a lot of amazing restaurants that have done the aquarium. Mostly back east.
It used to be a restaurant called Papa Chu's.
Papadou.
Yeah.
Papadou.
Yeah.
Papadou.
And
Yeah, they have Mamadou and Papadou in Texas.
No, this was Papa Chu's. It was
Chu's?
Sugar Daddy was what it meant.
Okay.
And it was only 3 minutes west of downtown LA.
Okay.
And they had the little booths with the curtains, so with your date you could pull the curtain. but they had, I never forget, the entire back bar was this massive aquarium, and they had a guy over on the side playing the piano, and you sit there. He had a frazzle day, and you sit there with a martini and all this, and watch all these fish and the pianos playing. It was the most.
That's kind of amazing.
It was the most seductive. I never forgot the aquarium part of it.
So you went and hung out behind the curtain after you watched the fish for a while, and
don't get nosy.
Don't get nosy.
I'm just saying. I feel like that's where you were going.
I'm
with
blushing.
That story.
That tells you.
Talking about what you like in a certain place, and you have moved locations quite a bit. You've gone from building to building. What do you look for as a restaurateur in a location that is important?
And what? I'm sorry.
You're building locations. You've changed locations quite often.
Well,
Expanding.
we've never gone looking for a restaurant. And I tell my son who's come in the business, here's a good location. I said, no, everyone has kind of sought us out, and because the building was unique and the neighborhood was unique. So we never, whatever restaurants we have, we were always happy with what we had until all of a sudden this amazing building showed up, and we just have to do it in El Cholo. We're going to do one in Salt Lake here. We're planning right now.
Oh, nice.
And 88 years old, I'm so thrilled to be doing that and doing it in a state that's friendly to business. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, friendly to business is the key.
It's
right?
the number one state on the list I saw friendly to business. California was 50th. But
but
anyway, I'm looking forward to it. It's my last hurrah. So
I really miss. Ron's got quite a few. He's got Louis. He's got Cannery. But the one that I used to go to all the time, I loved the piano bar, I loved the library, was the Cat and the Custard Cup.
yeah.
That was in Whittier, and that's right next to another El Cholo.
Right. That was there 41 years, and it was my son's over the last few years, and it was a very hard. My kids, they have good lives, but that son, I can really brag that he was extreme talented. He could cook fine dining food that you don't want to eat every night, which is very difficult to do.
The one thing I remember about your son is that when we would go there, and you knew some of my friends I would go there with, he would always come out and made it a habit to say hello, and extremely nice guy.
Well, when I come back, I want to be him, because at night, he would, after he closed the restaurant, he would go out, put on a cowboy hat, and the oil wells would go up and down like this, and he would get a bottle of red wine, and he'd climb over the fence at 3 o'clock in the morning and ride that thing like a bucking bronco. and
Is he single? I'm just kidding.
I get asked that a lot. Well, another story. We used to live near a golf course, and one of the holes you could shoot up, but you couldn't see the green. And he would hide in the trees as a 12-year-old and run out and take one of the balls and drop it in the hole. So when the guy they think they had a hole in one. And I give you a lot more stories. He never hurt anybody, but he was sure creative.
Sounds amazing.
You know what sucks about hole-in-ones? I've actually seen 6 hole-in-ones, and I've had goose egg.
What?
Yep.
Are you serious?
I'm so sad.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
well,
Never had a hole-in-one.
keep shooting,
Even
keep
had
shooting.
one
Keep trying.
hole-in-one?
Keep trying.
Never beat until you stop. So
Yeah, you got to keep doing
Yeah.
it. So, Ron, you're 88 years old. You're still kicking ass. How many restaurants do you have right now?
we have 8. Salt Lake will be 9.
Well, there'll be 9. So, what's your favorite? I mean, you've done everything in the restaurant business. You've been doing it basically 87 years of your 88 years. What's your favorite aspect as being an owner of a amazing chain of restaurants?
To building it like, well, let me back up. I'm working with the managers. We're teaching, you're not managers, you're like football coaches. And football coaches are very involved, and you have a game plan, and you're doing your best to make the team the very best and have that teamwork. And you're working with your people. You measure performance, and if someone's not performing, you coach them so they'll be better. Just building the team and seeing it, walking in when it's really working. That's what I like best.
That's pretty amazing to me, and that brings me back to your son a little bit, when he always came up to the table and said hello.
Uh-huh.
When I go to your restaurants, I get 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 servers or bartenders that come up to my table, and they just come over to say hi.
Yeah.
And you do have an amazing group of people.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I credit Lisa, our general manager. She's the one that hired him over the years. But let's say a lot of you remember Hans Prager, who owned the Ritz and everything. And to me, he was as far as restaurant people, he was head and shoulders above all of us. No one. But he said to me one time, he said, the next restaurant I open is going to be only the tables of 6. I said, why? He said, well, tables of 2, maybe they're married couples. Their conversation is kind of just quiet. You walk in, it looks boring. Tables of 4, I'm talking. Then when I'm stopping, you're talking. Then you're stopping. The next person's talking. It's polite. He said, but 6, he says, I'm talking to you. Then all of a sudden I'm talking to this person over here. He said, Perry's talking like that. They run out of wine. Someone says, bring more wine. And they walk out and they say, what a great evening. He says, they never pay attention to the food. They didn't pay attention to the service. But with themselves, they created a great evening. He said, and that's what you want.
That's amazing, because the other night, we all went out to the cannery, and there were 6 of us.
Uh-huh.
And, the sushi kept coming, and the liquor kept coming. That was a great time.
Yeah.
For most of us. We had a great time. But, you know, I never thought about that. Did you, just out of curiosity, do you remember Ernest Zing? Did you ever know Ernest?
Oh, he owned
The cellar.
the cellar. Yeah.
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 He's still running around. What a great guy. He was one of my other favorite
Yeah.
restaurateurs. He's another guy that, no matter what, like you stop and talk to your guests.
Yeah.
You know, you take the time. A lot of guys, they forget that.
Well, also, you never know who you're going to get to know, and someone become friends. Another example, I became friends with Nolan Ryan, who's the famous baseball player.
Sure.
And so I thought when the last year he was retiring, I said, you know what, I wonder what it's like to stand in the batter's box and face you. So he said, come on down. So I spent spring training with him and went
wow.
out one night, and he pitched to me. And he threw the ball, and it's on video, so I could get the bat on the ball. And then he said, okay, he said, I'm working on my 8th no-hitter. He says, 2 outs, you're the last batter. And what he's saying is, I want to get you more than anybody. And so it was an unbelievable experience. If I had not gotten to know him through the restaurants, that never would happen. And I can tell you other experiences that just never would happen had I not met people in the restaurants.
Well, it wouldn't, but that's all a credit to you, Ron, because you're such a great guy yourself. That's why your restaurants are so successful. That's why you've got such great employees.
Well.
It's the man behind the restaurant.
There's enough of that, but go ahead.
No, but that's what it is. I
Well,
mean,
and I'm curious, do you have to actually advertise anymore? I mean, are you reliant on your local clientele that are always there, or do you have to actually advertise for your restaurants?
It's still, in spite of all this deal about the media today, when I question people, they'll say, I came here for the first time, or I still hear, friends told me about it. Friends, it's still...
that's the best
It's
advertising.
something like 93% is still word of mouth. Yeah, yeah.
You just did that Jellyfish Lounge. How long ago did you open that up?
Well, that was part of when he first opened the cannery, and that was 20 years ago.
Oh, I thought it was new.
No.
No, we put the bar
No, but
downstairs.
you
That
got
was
the-
new. The windows out to the patio, that's new.
Okay.
You're always tweaking. It's interesting. You can be in business I can walk in the restaurant on Western. It's been there since 27, and I'll still find something to change and tweak that I never noticed before.
Well, I feel like it's necessary to evolve and move forward
It is.
and make
You need to
changes.
keep fresh.
And,
It's like a
yeah.
relationship. If it
Yeah.
stays stagnant, it dies. In other words, if you're not doing something new,
Beautiful.
you're going backwards.
Something real unique about both Louis and the cannery, you can bring your boat up and get food. Can you not from both of those, right?
Right.
Yeah. So for all you boaters out there, try it.
We've encouraging people to come up and park their boat out there, and we'll serve you out there. It creates another table out there, and you dine in the, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about Louis. How did that come about?
Named after
Named after
Louis
Louis
Zamperini.
Zamperini. Well, it came. Jeff Hatch, who does our design work for the restaurants, is a great friend. And
Hatch Design, they are amazing.
yeah, and Jeff and I were having lunch at the cannery a while back, and he said, you should look at where the Ritz was in and gone out of business. I said, again, Jeff, my life is orderly. I don't need it. I don't want it. He said, well, the landlord really needs a tenant right now, and he'll work really closely with you to make it worthwhile. I said, it's a great location, but I'm still not interested. And Jeff said, tell you what, I'll design the best restaurant I ever designed for you. And I said, oh, you really will? I have to see this. And I think he did a great job. I'm
did
very
do a great
happy
job.
with it. It's just special.
So when are we opening again? What days are we open over at Louis now?
We're open 5 days. We're going to open in 2 weeks. No, next week. No, I'm sorry. Next Monday and Tuesday. We're going to reopen on Monday and Tuesdays.
Oh, good.
So it'll be open 7 days now.
I always wondered about the parking problem because you got Billy's right next door.
They're
How did
good.
you
They're good valets. They handle it. There's parking across the way, and those guys run. They're young. They can
They can
run.
do that.
Yeah, and so they do a good job. They're good young guys.
So if I was a young guy, which that's clearly sailed, and I wanted to get into the restaurant business, what would you say to me? Or what would you say to a young Ron? Hey, if you wanted to get in the restaurant business, what would you say to that guy?
Well, I would go work for someone who is really, really good and really learn all the ropes from him. or her.
That's what I got from Steele when we had Steele on here. He did every single job. Like when he worked in the hotels and when he worked in the restaurants, he was a line cook, he was a busboy, he was a waiter, he was a bartender. He was, when he worked in the hotel, he cleaned rooms. He worked behind the front desk. I feel like if you own something, you should know what everyone does.
It's true. It's a common theme with successful people. You learn everything so you can do every job. Ron, you told me the other day, you guys, for all you people sitting on your couch over there that don't want to go to work because you're getting that check, time to go back to work. Ron, 88 years old, owns all these restaurants. He's in the kitchen doing dishes, weren't you, Ron?
Yep, one Friday night.
Yeah.
Until 8 o'clock came, and I conked out.
Yeah, but you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
That's what it takes to be successful, period.
It's true.
I don't care what you're doing,
1 million
but
%.
especially in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. You got to be hands-on all over the place.
Hey, listen, Ron, thank you very much for stopping by Happening Now with Hammer. We love having you. We love your restaurants.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, guys, El Cholo, the Cannery, Louis, these places are amazing. They have amazing employees. And guess what? If you need a job, guys, you should go check that out because you're going to make good money working there. Once again, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.